Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast, where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
Thank you very much for tuning in today. I think I have a guest today that's very near and dear to me, a kindred spirit, because he is a Christian, he is a husband, he's a girl dad. As y'all well know, I'm a girl dad, I'm a boy dad as well, but I have both, and the most persistent person you'll ever meet. This gentleman, he went from being a shy, quiet guy to one who commands any room he enters. And through his persistent efforts and transformative communication methods, he has helped hundreds of business owners build confidence and clarity in their speaking, which has transformed their lives and business amounting to over $1 million in recognized profits. All of us would like to do that. All of us would like to get to that point. And sometimes we're not able to say what's on our mind, what's in our heart, clearly and effectively, maybe even efficiently. So maybe he can help us with that today. I present to you Philip Sessions. Philip, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Hey, Maurice, thanks for having me. And I don't know if we have enough time today to fully extrapolate all of that, but hopefully we can get you some clarity on how to speak better.
Right. Well, we understand that it's going to take time for us to, you have to have multiple sessions and, all those type of things. It takes practice, looking in the mirror, things like that. But let me ask you a question. Since you said you were shy and quiet, what even encouraged you to come out of that box to speak?
That was multifaceted. So one, going to business conferences, the one I can really think of is 10X Growth Con 2. It was in Las Vegas, and I actually went with a college buddy to that. And just seeing those speakers, and one, it was cool to see them on stage. Two, just how they transformed my life and how they transformed other people's lives there. And then three, I guess a little side note there that I was like, especially Russell Brunson, ClickFunnels guy. He made a ton of money on that. Not that money was the prime thing, but I was like, oh, that is so awesome that he was able to do that. But more the transformation behind it to the masses on that stage, paired with the fact that I was in a 9-to-5 role where I was just tired of being talked down to. And I realized the reason why I was being talked down to was because I didn't know how to speak up for myself or speak about what was on my mind or anything. I was too afraid to speak up. And so it was finally just kind of sick and tired of being sick and tired of, and also seeing these influential people on these stages. And I wanted to be like that. I wanted to be able to change other people's lives. And I knew it needed to start with me by getting better at speaking.
So a lot of us have to deal with that on a 9-to-5 basis. We try to be respectful to our superiors, quote unquote, right? We try to be respectful to our teammates or our coworkers. And ultimately, we don't want to get fired. We want to make sure we have that money coming in, but when you decided to change the narrative, did you find that the atmosphere changed when you decided to speak up to your supervisor or the director or whatever it is? Did you find that things changed a little bit?
I did. In fact, I found that it's a lot harder to get fired than you actually think. and so for me in that particular role, I had some conversations with the manager, as well as it was a smaller company. So the next level up was the president of the company, and had conversations with him as well about this. And really, basically what the president told me was that, hey, well, you're going to deal with assholes no matter where you go. Well, okay, so I guess this isn't really going to get resolved. So I moved on from there. But even at other corporate jobs that I had, I realized that when I spoke up more for myself,
Mm-hmm.
that actually I gained more respect. As long as I wasn't disrespectful
Right.
when I spoke up or spoke my mind, a lot of times it, wasn't an issue. The only time that I found where it was an issue was more it wasn't politically correct, so to say, or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
corporate politics correct,
Mm-hmm.
and it was more just a hand slap at the end of the day, or
Mm-hmm.
a manager just saying, "Oh, well, you can't say things like that," even though they know good and well they wish they would have said the same thing. And so I found that I really wasn't getting fired for that. And then my colleagues or my coworkers actually were thankful that I was willing to say that.
Mm.
Now, it's
Mm-hmm.
probably impacted the income that I was making a little bit because of
Yeah.
portfolio reviews and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it probably really didn't impact it that much either, because it's
Mm.
not like when you're in the corporate world, I mean, 3 to 5% at the most is probably you're getting, unless if you're getting some kind of promotion or anything like that. So
Mm-hmm.
it really didn't impact me from a financial perspective or getting fired, but it really impacted me from now I had influence with my coworkers and better rapport. And then I also felt better and more confident in myself because I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't being timid and holding back my true personality. And then also on top of that,
Mm-hmm.
now I kind of started setting the terms for what I was going to do and not do, because before
Right.
I'd kind of get run over. Okay, I'll work extra. Okay, I'll get that done. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. Or no, something needs to give. I can do
Mm-hmm.
that, but you need to take this off me, off my plate and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And by having those conversations, they realize that while Philip will do the work, we can't just keep loading them down. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, that's the easy button on management side, on leadership side, is just to keep giving that person, that workhorse, the work over and over again. And
Mm-hmm.
well, they'll just take care of it. And then you start doing 90% of the work, and you got 10 other teammates and they're doing the other 10%. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's not fair. So you have to
Right.
learn to speak up. And that's what I found through speaking up.
So, a lot of times when we're in that position, we don't find the value, and sometimes we forget that idea of there are no dumb questions, right? So how did you understand that even though you were shy and quiet, that you even understood that there was value in in speaking up, that there was value in the question that ultimately impacted everyone else? Because a lot of times us shy and quiet people feel as though we don't have that value.
Yeah. Yeah. So it really, for me, it was more not necessarily monetary value there,
Mm-hmm.
but I noticed that my self confidence started to get better. But I did actually have a monetary perspective. Actually, that
Mm-hmm.
job that basically the manager said, or the president said what he said.
Mm-hmm.
The next job I went to, rather than just saying, "Okay, I'll take that," I actually spoke up about, like, they wanted to start me at a certain rate, a dollar rate, and I said, "No, I want this hourly rate." Well, we can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, well, in 6 months with a good review, it's typically is every year they give you a raise, that I want this. And they're like, okay, well, we got there. I'm like, well, I've been doing above and beyond that. So I
Mm-hmm.
actually think that I need more than that. And so I ended up getting a $2 raise in six
Nice.
months instead of just a dollar raise, because I was willing to negotiate that on the front end. But the self confidence is a big thing. Like I said, that
Mm-hmm.
you start having your coworkers, not that they kind of look up to you, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not like you're over them authority wise,
Right.
but they start looking at you and in your direction, especially when things, somebody needs to make a decision. And I think the bigger the corporation is, the
Mm-hmm.
less decisions that management's willing to make.
Yeah.
And so I started noticing that people would look towards me, and now I've kind of became more of the extroverted person instead of the introverted person. But when I first started out, that's what it was. Like, they were
Right.
like, "Hey, well, let's look to Philip. Philip's kind of be our spokesperson and everything." And when we have to present on topics, I end up being the person that they want to present. Like, "Hey, you're
Mm.
comfortable doing it here. You do it." And so I actually get more spotlight now because of that,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm willing to actually speak up. And most people, and now I've got an engineering background, so that kind of helps with that also, because most engineers don't want to talk.
Right.
So like, "Hey, Philip can do it." Like,
Right.
and so I end up being the person that gets voluntold, so to say, to do that. But it gives me way more opportunities because of that, because I'm willing to speak up.
So, when you made that decision to speak up, was that before or after the 10x?
That was after the 10x. So kind of like I said, it all
Mm-hmm.
kind of paired together. So I was
Mm-hmm.
at what I'm trying to think. Yeah, I was at that current job whenever I went to the 10x
Mm-hmm.
event and everything. I kind of saw that, and that was kind of part of that spark to get me into that public speaking. But after the 10X was where I decided to speak up and everything.
So here's the reason I'm asking, because sometimes we go to those type of conferences and we see this one individual and we could say, wow, I think I could do the exact same thing, right? They're not saying anything that's that profound, that that whatever it is, like it's not, pixie dust flying all over the place. Like it's not, it's like somebody waving a wand. Like we're not at Magic Kingdom, nothing like that, right?
Well,
So
10X might have that. I mean, I went to GrowthCon 3 as well.
Right.
Cardone jumped out of an airplane onto the Marlins Stadium, I think it was. Yeah, so I mean, you never know. I mean,
Right.
yeah, you have Snoop Dogg there, his 2 Rolls Royces, all this stuff. I'm not surprised Pixie Dust is going to be at the next GrowthCon.
Right. But I'm saying that to paint the picture, right? That they're just like us. We can be in that position, and so that's why I'm asking, when you had gone there and you realized, no one else is going to speak up for me. Yeah. Also, I have that space and that value in what I have to say, to people that can move them, that can encourage them. We are, a lot of times we don't like, and that's why I went into the value piece, because sometimes we don't feel as though that anyone wants to hear what we have to say. So I just want to understand, like, a little bit more. How did that influence you, right? What was it? Was there a particular word? Was there a statement? Was it, like you said, the Rolls Royces? Was it jumping out the plane, those type of things? Or was it just saying, hey, you know what?
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you want to get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.
What he's saying is not that profound. I could do the exact same thing. Just like it's motivating me, I could share that information with someone else.
Yeah, it was kind of more along the latter of those lines and everything. That It was more seeing that and realizing that there wasn't necessarily something super special about them. Obviously, they were ahead of me in business, and then at that time with the age as well, life and everything. But yeah, they really weren't much more different than me. They just had taken more action and had greater success in their area of expertise and everything. And that's what I found as I've been on this journey as well, is that while you think, oh, I've got to teach all this crazy like PhD level stuff and super sophisticated, most people need the very basic things. And think about milk versus meat. They need the milk, and the milk is going to be enough for them to really learn and grow. They don't need the meat per se, unless they're also in your industry and they've been doing it as well for 10, 20 years, whatever. They don't need the high level, super sophisticated things. And so I just saw that that's something I could do. But the other side of this as well was that I looked out at my legacy. Like, who do I want to be? Who do I want to represent? What do I want to become? And I knew that I needed to make changes if I wanted to become that person that I wanted to become. I couldn't continue to do the same things, the same actions that I was doing today and be another person. I can't be a millionaire by doing the actions of somebody who's a 10,000-aire.
Right.
I gotta do millionaire type actions in order to become a millionaire. So whether that's saving X amount a month or going out and making a business that makes so much money, like you're creating your own business, whatever that is. But I needed to figure out a path, a plan, and start doing the actions that person that I wanted to be, to become that person.
So, and as we're talking about someone like Richard Branson or Cardone or Myron Golden, like, we talk about these individuals and we put them up on a pedestal and we feel as though we can't compete. And when they speak to us, as we're listening, sometimes we feel as though we internalize it, like they're only talking to us, but they have to talk to a little bit of everybody. And one of the things that you teach is how to speak to everybody, how to grasp the essence of everyone that's sitting there. Possibly can't touch everybody, but the essence overall. So what's a key piece that you might have taken from that moment at that 10x or whatever it might have been that you've been able to implement in what you teach to say, hey, you know what? I could talk to any and everybody that I come across.
What I found is stories are what really help you be able to connect with audiences. So if I went down like an engineering route and start talking about like an engineering story, I would be able to connect with engineers, but then I'm excluding everybody that's a non-engineer, unless they happen to have a cousin or something like that that's an engineer, then maybe they can get related back in that. So it's about the stories you share. Yes, you're going to share information, but when you craft stories into the information you're sharing, you got to find stories that relate with everybody or mostly everybody. And so not, and I think when you bring up like a political story or an example or a religious analogy, those are things that are going to help relate with people, because most people have some kind of political affiliation. They have some kind of religious belief in everything. And so just finding stories that can relate, like, or, talking about parenthood. Everybody's had a parent, most likely. And if they haven't, they probably, they know about parents and things like that. And so trying to find stories, that's how you speak to that diverse audience. And you have to get a little bit more broad on that story and find something that relates with them. But that's the best way I found to really relate with a diverse audience, is just finding something that most people have probably encountered. Again, like you said, you're not going to get everybody, and that's okay. And part of this too, as well, you want to make sure that it's a story that's also related back to you, because when you're trying to be genuine and connect with them by sharing stories about you that relate with the audience, that's when they start to really know, like, and trust you. And I call it the speaker's breath. We've heard of commission breath, but there's the speaker's breath too, because if I'm here on this podcast right now and I'm just trying to make y'all feel good and say all these funny things, but then I'm like, hey, guess what? My pitch is coming up. I'm about to tell you about how you can spend $9.99 on my course here and you can become a millionaire. You're gonna feel that from a million miles away. I mean, you're here digitally, you're hearing this. You can hear that in the tone of my voice and just how I'm sounding, so that it's speaker's breath. So you want to make sure that the emotion behind and the intent behind what you're saying is also about being there for the audience and trying to teach the audience something, versus, hey, I'm going to say all this stuff to sound good, but I'm about to sell them. Everybody can tell that. Again, the commission breath, the used car salesperson, you can tell when they're coming to you just to sell you something. I don't care what it is. They're going to put you in a car so they can get commission. Same thing with speaker breath. You're just saying whatever you can to sound great till you can pitch them and everything. So really just coming up with stories that relate as much, with a larger group, and then also making sure that you have that emotion of caring for them, which really will help amplify you as a person also, because you're connecting with them, but then they're going to like you more. You're going to have that, wow, Philip or Maurice, they have such great energy. And it's because you're somebody that's likable, somebody they want to be around. Just like that negative Nancy, you want to be away from them. Same thing with the speaker breath. So make sure you're just genuine and really come off as caring, because that's just who you are, kind of thing.
I don't have a story, Philip. I don't have nothing to say. I get up and go to work. I leave out at 7:00. I'm at work at about 8, and I get home at 6:30, and I cook my spaghetti and have my little tea before I go to bed, and I take my little vitamins and I go to bed. So that's my life every day, all day. So I don't have a story. I feel as though I don't have a story in that, Philip. So how can I encourage someone if it's just the same thing all day, every day?
Great question. And I was actually the same way for a while, because I grew up in a middle class household and everything. And I'm not going to say the joke that I was just thinking of, but I grew up middle class and everything. And I felt like, oh, I don't have this rags to riches story. I didn't go broke. I wasn't a druggie. I wasn't in jail, all this stuff. And now look at me, I'm a quadrillionaire, all this stuff. Like, no, I was just a normal person who, became an engineer, and all this stuff. So kind of all these stereotypes that I led and everything, and just very average-ish kind of person, if you will. So I didn't feel like I had that rags to riches story either. But what I realized was that these daily things that I do are a lot of the same daily things that somebody else does. So I can be relatable in that aspect. But then what I started doing is looking back, 2, 3, 5, 10 years back. What are some of those things that I did that if I would have had the information I know now in my head, that I could have taught that person back then? And those are the stories I started sharing. Those are the things that I started talking about. And so for you saying that, hey, I don't have this story, I've got nothing great to share. You do have something to share. You are thinking that everything that you've done is insignificant. I mean, the podcast here, I mean, I'm sure you've had this as well. And right now you're like, oh yeah, I do a podcast. Like, no big deal, because you've got a podcast, you do a podcast. Same thing when people have a new car, or they have a car, they've had it for 5 years, like, I've got this car, like, no big deal. When you first bought that car, when you first started that podcast, you're like, oh my gosh, I've got a podcast. I got a brand new car. I'm so excited. Right. But it becomes this normal thing for you. And that's the beauty of being a human. But also the downside is that as we get used to something, we get this tolerance for it. And so we start to think it's just normal, when in fact it's actually not normal. So sharing about you will make you relate with somebody else, and especially relate with somebody who is 2 or 3 years behind you, somebody that was in the situation you were in, regardless of the fact that you didn't have the rags to riches story, that you weren't a druggie, anything like that. You don't have to be anything like that. Right. I mean, I could go back and talk about how I was a poor college student, and poor based on not having any income, right? And there were some struggles there, and other people could relate with that and how I came out of that. You could find stories, and that's not like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. You went from being a poor college student to now you make 6 figures or whatever it is. Like, no, I wasn't on crack, got arrested. Now I'm a millionaire. Like, the story you think like that. Right. So it's about realizing that the normal thing for you is something extraordinary for other people. And give another example, like our country. A lot of people think that in the United States, that the United States is not that great of a place to live in anymore. And yes, there's definitely places that are not great places for whatever reason. Right. But there are so many great places here. And there are so many people that just would wish that they could live here right now. Right. But for us, it's, it's okay. But it is a great place. But it's about a perspective shift that we have to have.
So, Philip, I'm sorry, man. I mean, time kind of went by quicker than I anticipated.
You're good. Hey, well, we're having fun.
I know, right? So I appreciate you coming on, Philip. In order for someone that's listening today who doesn't understand their value, whether it's in their voice, whether they don't understand the value of how they're living their life, because they don't understand that it can affect someone else. So how can they reach out to you and listen to some of the tidbits and things you got to say, hey, you know what, believe in yourself and understand that your voice can resonate with someone else. So where can they find you?
You can find me on all social media platforms, but if you want to listen more to me, you can go over to my website, speakingsessions.com, and that'll get you links to all my social media as well as my podcast, Speaking Sessions.
Nice. So Philip, before I let you go, man, I got to ask you my world famous question. I ask everybody. My would you rather question. You ready for it now?
Yeah. I'm ready.
All right. So, would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
Man, that is a weird question. Oh man, I think I'm gonna have to go with the fork in the road, because for me, it's limited options. It's either this way or that way, and I guess that's my engineering brain. It's a 1 or a 0. So I'd rather do that than rather think, if I pick this door, then maybe I missed these other 2 opportunities. It's just like, either it's going to be a good opportunity or a bad opportunity. So I'll go with the fork in the road.
So I'm going to ask you another question based off of your engineering mindset of your 1 and 0. If you could choose anyone in the world, dead or alive, who would you do a singing duet with?
Singing duet. Man, I was not expecting the singing part. Oh man, I guess I have to go with my dad.
Yeah, that
He was,
nice.
yeah, he's been gone for a while now,
Okay.
so be good to be able to hang out again,
Nice.
sing probably some church songs or some old 40s and 50s country with them and everything. But yeah, I'll have to go with my dad on that one.
Nice, nice, man. And I appreciate you being a good sport by answering the questions, man. I appreciate
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah, these are fun. Little off key, no pun intended there.
I know, right? I know, right? But thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Sure, no problem. And I thank you very much for listening to That Will Never Work podcast. And I will talk to you a little later.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Chisholm Group LLC and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work, or will it?
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.